right, Bryce, Eddy here. Hey, so you have seen the news. The world is in chaos. We have all kinds of geopolitical drama right now on the world stage, and we are indeed in a second Cold War. So, I want to talk to you today about protecting your household's future, starting with your finances. The signs could not be clearer. Gold has surged past 44.50 an ounce, and silver is blowing past $80. That's a historic record for both of those. And the biggest names right now on Wall Street are predicting even more growth due to all of the economic events. Their price targets are climbing as high as 6,000 on gold, $100 on silver. On top of this, we're seeing more and more instability, and nations are trying to undermine America's influence and dollar dominance. That's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold. Buy gold, folks. This company is veteran owned and they give back, donating proceeds to Tunnel to Towers in honor of our first responders and heroes. And here's the opportunity for my listeners and supporters: you can receive up to $10,000 in free gold and silver credited to your account with qualifying purchases, of course. That's real physical gold and silver, tangible assets you can hold in your hands to defend your wealth. Don't wait until it's too late. Go to bryceeddygold.com. That's bryceeddygold.com, or call 888-670-7011. Again, that's 888-670-7011. Take action today. Protect your family, strengthen your future, because freedom and security are not handed to us. They are preserved and fought for by the choices we make. This is Bryce Eddy for American Independence Gold. Freedom isn't given, it's secured. Welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So today my guest is a guest that I had a great time with the last time he was on, Mr. Johnny Vedmore, newspace.com. How are you, my brother?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back, Bryce. I'm always happy to come back, and especially like with someone who's passionate, cares about stuff, and it's crazy times right now. The people who have to really analyze what's going on, and it takes people who have been in this game for a while and understand what's going on, to explain it to a lot of people and give context to people. So I really appreciate what you're doing out there too.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've been paying attention to Newspaste and the articles that you've been writing, and you and I think share a lot of perspectives, and this battle is confusing because our enemies are, when people ask, like, okay, who is they? I believe they are really a globalist cabal of folks that want to be the grand deciders of the universe and want to make all the decisions for us, want to accumulate power to themselves. The central planners, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, they exist, and you're doing a good job exposing them. You're an excellent researcher, you're a competent writer, you do a good job of laying these things out. And we talked in the past, I believe, about fifth generation warfare. You understand that. You understand what they're doing to undermine people who like liberty. And I just want to have you back on based on some of the stuff that's going on with Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files, and just, any other chaos you want to highlight, man. You're always a lively guest. So what's happening, brother? Uh-oh, I lost you there for a
Well,
second.
life has been crazy. I know that you were talking about fifth generation warfare, and suddenly the videos glitched, which is just the type of world that we're in. I mean, everything seems like it's gone to a point where we're going into fantasy, and we know it's a human-made fantasy realm. It's made by the same people. A lot of the people, when I've looked at the history of the creation of the internet, the technocracy, the design of it, the implement people who are implementing it at base level. So I'm talking about like the acolytes of Curtis Yarvin and the like, and the people who surround Thiel and others, and the rise of this. They're the types of people who hung around in their parents' basement playing Dungeons and Dragons, making fantasy worlds, and you need that to create a future. The most intelligent philosophers in history who have changed society were also into games. They were into thinking. They were into looking at different perspectives and different ideas, and often creating fantasy. But the fifth generation warfare, in the era of that, lends itself to fantasy, lends itself over to, we are living in a world where people are on the edge of being able to decide whatever they want to do and whatever they want to be in life, and suddenly do it. They have everything machines suddenly popping up around them. They have things that we're in the stage, obviously Nietzsche's last man is here. We're looking into our phones and we're letting our phones on our Fitbits tell us what to do and tell us which direction to go in. We're obviously entering into a world which has been claimed but was coming, and a lot of that sort of philosophy visualize people that are very close to people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Envision these ubermensch characters, these big guys who are going to come in and change the world, and those guys are really at the core fantasists who can create a world inside their head. And at the moment we're allowing them to create the world, and fifth generation warfare lends to like a barrel roll coming. I mean, we are really on the edge of an insane fantasy, you know.
It's been a little while for my audience that I have, talked about the generations of warfare. Let's really quickly define Generation Five, Gen Five warfare, and I'll let you take that part, but I will quickly summarize the other generations of warfare for the audience.
Please do.
Yeah, Gen 1 warfare is close contact. Think Braveheart, running across the field at each other, hacking each other with swords,
That's how I grew
screaming,
up.
bloody.
I grew up
That's
in the
right.
17th century. I grew up, my dad, I'm serious, my dad was in a 17th century enactment society of 8,000 people, and we used to go every weekend. I'd be in a campsite dressed in 17th century clothes. My dad was a commanding officer of a regiment at 250, Colonel John Birch's regiment of foot. We indulged, my whole youth was first generation
Oh,
warfare.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So, second generation warfare was made possible by rifling. You could shoot at each other from a distance, you could lob bombs at each other, and technology kind of it caused that transformation. Third generation warfare, think World War II, bombing supply lines, blowing up factories, dropping leaflets, things like that. A little bit of a start of the information warfare space, a
Mhm.
little bit of the psychological stuff, but really, it wasn't until you got into that fourth and fifth generation, now sixth generation style warfare that includes all of these other things that you're an expert in. So why don't you take it from there?
Ooh, well, you see, I tell you, that was a really good way to describe it. And I like the fact you mentioned like the letter drops in World War II, because I was talking to Daniel Esterlin about this just yesterday. There's a guy, of course, he's pretty famous. He's kind of Klaus Schwab's second in command at the World Economic Forum of the past. Like, I know Klaus Schwab stepped aside a lot now, but Richard Edelman, they do Edelman's Trust Barometer. He's fronts up Edelman PR, and Edelman PR is the biggest PR firm in the world. It represents basically 60% plus of all governments, of all companies, everything. It's kind of like what the blob looks like when it gets to a certain, and every time there's coups, there's government coups. Like in the UK, we had like these little political coups with Corbyn and stuff, them to a bit destroying the left, and all of the people who wrecked their political careers doing these things get jobs in Edelman PR afterwards. But Richard Edelman's father was Daniel J. Edelman. He was the guy who created Edelman PR, and he actually originally did psychological operations during World War II, where it was the letter drops out of the planes, and that was very close to marketing. It allowed, learning how to make people think is something that is really, really important. Then making them that turning that thought into action is something that they've really wanted to do. Now, the reason why we have fifth generation warfare today is an extension of the previous post-war era of warfare. Of course, we ended up in 1957. The Kissinger and his ilk laid down perpetual limited warfare in nuclear weapons and foreign policy. In 1961, mutually assured destruction was posited by Herman Kahn in On Thermonuclear War. And he said, and it'd already been worked out in the CFR. They were doing all of this in the Council on Foreign Relations, of course, all this mapping out and gaming out these ideas, and the Hudson Institute. What they worked out is that if everybody had nuclear bombs, which they were going to start proliferating nuclear technology to loads of different countries soon after this. If everybody had nuclear bombs, then no one would fire the nuclear bombs because they'd be mutually assured destruction. So it would be silly. It's like a lose. You're pressing a lose button straight away. And if you got mutually assured destruction and no one's going to have these almighty wars like World War I and World War II, what happens is perpetual limited warfare is something that becomes an option, that's a doable option, because there's a load of different tiers of other techniques that have to be employed if you don't have a big war. A lot of them are psychological warfare. A lot of them are intelligence-led, spying, murders. These sort of operations we know have existed and we've had evidence of in the past. State-sanctioned murder is something that has happened, coups in other countries, etc. We've seen all of this happen over this time. And through that time, they've been developing an agenda to take over the leaderships of every country on earth, every organization, everything that matters, all of the big tech companies, anything they can envision in the future having power. They already create leadership courses for. And if you look at those leadership courses, you find the thing that they're trained on the most is how to make people behave, how to change people's behavior. This is one thing that goes throughout time. And fifth generation warfare is a culmination of 50, 60 years of that psychological operation taking over as from kinetic warfare as the prime choice. And part of the reason why it's going to be even further developed and all pervasive in the future, and is taking on is being used kind of openly. I'd say the Epstein files is pretty obviously a flooding the zone of information, and no one knows where to look and no one knows what's up and what's down. It looks just like fifth generation warfare. It's being used so readily at the moment because we're having a change in society because of technology. Drones, it mean that warfare isn't going to be the same. You can't have even perpetual limited warfare. And globalism, the multipole globalism that we've got now, which is really what it is, we're all pretending that we're all still nation states, but we're not. We're multipole globalism already.
Yep.
That's merging closer and closer together, and all the sides are adopting the same technology, looking like the same things, and are trying to find ways to distract their own populations while they change the world around them and they bring order out of the chaos.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, they can fleece us of our resources, money, our freedoms, all of that. If we're, fighting amongst each other, if we are paying attention to, all the crazy things that people are saying, if we're, getting bogged down in insane conspiracy theories, all of the real conspiracies that are right out in the open, we're not talking about. And I find it a fascinating thing that people have gotten caught up in. So I love the clarity that you bring to these things and sort of how you're unwrapping a lot of this stuff on Newspaste and your writings. Plus, you're a fabulous and interesting guest to have on. But I'd love for you to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the Epstein thing. I've got some of my own theories and thoughts. I have enough knowledge in what's happened. I also don't believe that there's any good guys pretty much in life, especially in some of these massive governments and organizations and deep state actors. There's very few, and there are some really pure people who are principled and are, pushing forward
Everyone's
on
got a
behalf of America.
price, Bryce. Everyone's got a price, Bryce.
Yep, yep, yep. That is absolutely correct. So give us your thoughts all, and let's riff a little bit on what we think all of this is about.
Okay, I'll give you a really quick rundown of what I believe I've discovered Jeffrey Epstein to be through this time. It's probably be taken me about 5 minutes. Starts with the
Perfect.
fact that he's recruited by the CIA. He's running CIA programs. Like he's involved in the financing for Iran Contra. He's sharing an office with the future Epstein victims lawyer Stanley Pottinger at this point. And at this point, what this group is a very small New York based elite that are a Republican leaning CIA that are trying to work out how to control the Democrats. Now, they've already had a failure in this because they tried it. That's what happened with Watergate. You got caught bugging offices, looking into stuff. Stanley Pottinger, who's sharing this office in Iran Contra, during Iran Contra, smuggling guns with Jeffrey Epstein during Iran Contra, so that George H.W. Bush, his best friend, can get into office. That same Stanley Pottinger is involved for a lot of these cases in the past, was actually the one who interviews Helms, who was the head of the CIA during Watergate. He interviews himself in 1977 and signs it off as, don't worry, there's nothing to see there, on your way, no one's going to get prosecuted. Pottinger was a company man. It was very clear that he was involved in Watergate, the assassination of Martin Luther King cover-up. He was the one who decided there was no investigation needed after looking at all the evidence. We know later on that there was investigation needed. He was involved in the standoff at Wounded Knee, Kent State Massacre, the assassination of Orlando Letelier, where he got permission for the CIA, George H.W. Bush's CIA at this time. He got permission for them to spy domestically against the constitution of the CIA. And he did that by befriending Eugene Proper, who was put in charge of the case, and then going and getting a special permission, basically, for the CIA to be able to spy based on the fact that, we need to look at these people who were involved in Operation Condor, an operation that we created, the CIA created. And so all of these guys are doing all of these operations for a reason. It's, like I say, a Republican-leaning CIA who are trying to control the left, and they're looking for a way. Now, during that same period, there's a lot of philosophical ideologies happening, political ideologies manifesting. One of them is third-way politics. It's being created by a guy called Anthony Giddens, and that is going to come to fruition in multiple books, but will be 87, 88, 89, 90 are the big years where it really catches on. And these elites, this intelligence-linked elite, realize they've got a political ideology that can rid them of the left, this really far left that they've got to crush. The CIA, the idea of the CIA, in the way it works, is very right. It leans very right. And the Republicans have used it as a tool for a very long time to keep everybody on the right. Third way politics purges the left of a left-wing party, forces the left into the center. The right then has to do a bit of purging so it can compete. And then you end up with one centrist blob. And that centrist blob is useful to intelligence agencies because there's no political solutions there. They're all on the right or the left. And because no political solutions are there, it fills up the hole with austerity, perpetual war, and intelligence meddling and surveillance and other things. Just like in mutually assured destruction, there's a set of things that happen underneath. So this political ideology, which Bill Clinton, very important in the Epstein affair, he says in 1992 when he's running, I'm the first third way politician. I'm no longer a left, I'm the center. He enacts third way politics. As soon as he gets into office, Epstein arrives there. 17 times over the next 2 years, he visits the White House. What's he doing? They're planning on how to control all the left leaning leadership candidates of the future in the Democratic Party. So they're all aligned, all playing ball, and all doing what the CIA wants. So he's funding Bingaman, he's funding Kerry, he's funding RFK Jr., he's funding anybody who's got a potential of being someone in the future, including people who end up being, vice president picks, etc. And this is the Clinton team is at the other side of Iran-Contra. While Jeffrey Epstein was helping fund the Iran side of Iran-Contra, Clinton was helping run money through Mina Arkansas for the Contra side of Iran-Contra. So they're on the same team. It's the CIA. They're in the White House. They're pretending to be Democrats, but they're actually Republican-leaning CIA people who are still trying to control the left of politics so they can get away with what they want. Now, the issue being where we are now and what we're heading into now is that the technocracy that they saw coming and they knew was on its way and they were designing to an extent is really digital communism. It's very much like left wing. You don't really get, it's not really naturally right. So these again had to go in. Epstein, he's the one who's through Edge from 1997, 1998, 1999 onwards until his death, is involved with all of the scientists, all of the big tech leaders, and he's making sure they're trained in master classes, like the 6-part masterclass in 2008, which the attendees of this 6-part masterclass on how to make people behave in the right way you want them, with the creators of the behavioral insight technology, the nudge units, the psychological manipulation surreptitiously to make people do things without them knowing, already being adopted into normal society, accepted by government, accepted everywhere, is what they're training with. Epstein's funded training, and it's Elon Musk, it's Jeff Bezos, it's Sergey Brin, it's Larry Page, it's Evan Williams, who's at the time the head of Twitter's, it's Salah Kamanga, who's one of the head of YouTube's. That's apart from the other ones who are behavioral psychologists. That's all that's in the room, is all of the big guys, all of the guys now who are being trained on and being groomed so that they are controlled. So that when the technocracy is implemented, the people right at the top, the Ubermensch, are already in the pocket of the same people who are paying Jeffrey Epstein and others, and we all know who they are. They're the Rothschilds of the world and the others who are living in this fantasy world, a society that's completely and utterly detached from our world. We can no longer see what they look like. When we see behind the curtain, when we pull it back, it is so grotesque that people will refuse to believe it until they have to believe it. And my past 7 years of reporting on the Epstein case has been me listening to people refusing to listen to how bad it is until eventually they've had to, the curtain's been forced back for them, because humans, they don't want to believe that there's another society, there's another world where it's one rule for us and it's one rule for them means something. It means that those laws that apply to all of us, that we abide, they do not abide by those laws. It could be that every single, however conspiratorial this is, it could be that every single person who's claimed to have died is not dead at all. That they have little, like Terramar was, Ghislaine Maxwell, planning these out in the middle of the sea, away from everybody, where no ships, no planes pass, big units where people can live, people can do all of their work. All of this stuff was being planned. It's not being planned for nothing. To be naive is to think that they're planning it and they're not going anywhere with it. They were looking for ways to go off grid completely, outside our society. That's why they were in islands. That's why they were offshore. They were trying to get far away from accountability and responsibility as possible. And the thing is that we allow it. We just let them. You think about 10-year period between 1993 and 2003, Jeffrey Epstein was having his crew bring between 2 and 3 girls a day back for him, just him, to have these massages, and they were all abuse, and they were usually underage kids. So that went on for 10 years. That 10-year period, only, I'm not saying what went on before or after, just that 10-year period would be about 8,000 sexual offense charges. and he got
Wow.
tried and only half punished for one. And that says everything about the society that they inhabit. It's one where they do not live by the rule of law. They do not live by what we accept as norms, That means whatever we can think is conspiratorial could be exactly what they're doing because they're living in a fantasy world. And in their fantasy world, they've got all of the money, they got all of the resources, they can do whatever they like, and they can call us idiots when we point at them and say, "You're doing whatever you like." So that's what I see. Jeffrey Epstein was the everything man, in between the interlocutor. He wasn't Mossad or CIA. They were all on the same team
That's right.
anyway. He's a
That's right.
big gray globalist intelligence mobster who's working for the richest people in society who keep investing in the tech they know is going to be important in the future because they've got all of the inside knowledge. And it's a big circle and cycle that moves upwards. And those who rise to the top are the most narcissistic in society. And every expression we see from them is evil, horror, and the worst things you could possibly imagine, because that's what narcissistic, awful people do.
Bryce Eddy here. Most of you know I'm an aggressive high energy guy, a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and between bodybuilding and my high intensity lifting sessions, I still train like I'm 25. You don't need to be a maniac like me to have painful, stiff joints, but if you do, Joint Complex by Nation Health MD can help. I'm a big believer in this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're struggling with aches or stiffness in your knees, hips, or back, Joint Complex contains natural ingredients that promote joint comfort and mobility. It features high-quality turmeric and boswellia to support a healthy inflammatory response. It contains natural eggshell membrane, which promotes strong and supple joint cartilage. Every bottle of Joint Complex is manufactured here in America, so you know you're getting the best quality for your money. Right now, you can try Joint Complex risk-free and save 35% on your order. Go to nationhealthmd.com and enter discount code BRYCE at checkout. That's nationhealthmd.com and discount code BRYCE to get 35% off your order of Joint Complex today. Spot on. So, I've talked, and I talked very early on, and guys like you and others that have been researching and following this for years, the information's been out there. It is a whole group of people, which is why so much of it's still redacted, which is why just you can't just throw it all out there, because everybody is touched by some of this in terms of multiple intelligence agencies. This wasn't a secret. I find it interesting. Of course, it's being positioned that, oh, it was Trump. Trump was everything. It's all about Trump. It's all about no. There are implications that dozens of very, very powerful, hundreds of very, very powerful people, knew about this or directly participated in these things. And yes, there's so many people that are escaping justice because it's like it would break the world. And I think that, like you said, pulling back that curtain to find out how many people were involved in this as an operation against us. I was asked one time, I come from I'm a preacher's kid, come from a Christian background, and a lot of people can't get their head around why would these billionaires, why would a Bill Gates or people like that be interested in this kind of these kind of proclivities,
Mm,
let's call it, so we don't get bounced off of social
mhm,
media. Well, because nothing is forbidden a billionaire
mm,
that we can access, right? Where they've got all kinds of resources. So if you want to chase, women, you want to, drink, do drugs, do all of those things, all of that's at your fingertips. Well, what are the things that's not at your fingertips? Well, those are the things that people like that eventually pursue because their appetites for things never really get satisfied because they can have anything they want.
A lot of it is we know it's deception.
Mhm.
I mean, it's basic downright deception. But if I go back, which I have done, I wrote a series for Unlimited Hangout back in 2022, late 22 and 23, called The Black Hand. And it was very nice for Whitney Webb to put it up on Unlimited Hangout, because it was kind of aligned with some of the history, but it's not really like the tech world that she tackles normally. So it was quite nice for her to put up, and it was 6 part. It's now at 8 parts, and it was looking back at London scene. In actual fact, it came from research in One Nation Under Blackmail, volume maybe volume 1. Whitney Webb asked me to look into the Craze ownership. The Craze were the London gangsters, famous London gangsters, the twins, Ronnie and Reggie. And I was asked to look into the ownership of Esmeralda's Barn, and it was a nightclub in London where lots of stuff happened. I mean, it was a center of a load of different things. And I looked at it, and I confirmed the Craze did own it. They bought into it in the 1960s. It was quite easy to confirm that. And then I started thinking, who's this Esmeralda? Who is Esmeralda? And I went back, and the place had opened up 5 years before in London, in the West End. So we're the rich part of London, affluent part of London, in Kensington. And it was opened up by a lady who'd owned a couple of properties, one opposite the Ritz, so wealthy properties. A woman called Esmeralda Gulan, who was a former actress, a fantastically interesting lady and a really interesting entrepreneur. She knew everybody. She knew everybody in society, and she used her fantastic charm to create these different places. And one day, she's found gassed to death in her bed. And the coroner's report is very interesting, because they talk to actually one of the guys who is a gas technician, who says the actual pipe had been cut. So it looks like they had purposely been gassed, her and this other lady. The other lady went to sleep in another room and woke up. Was found next to Esmeralda. And in actual fact, in a year and a half, in London nightclubs, all in a very small area, all of the women who run them died one by one. There was each of them. It was 7 or 8 women in a year and a half period, all died. One of them didn't take enough. The coroner's report said the painkillers she took wasn't enough to kill her, and the lamp cord she had accidentally got wrapped around her own throat wasn't enough to strangle her to death. But the combination of the two led to her death. That was Barbara Knox-Marsh, poor girl. And what actually happened afterwards was there was a takeover. Esmeralda's Barn got taken over by a guy called Horace Dibbin. Horace Ronald Dibbin, known as Hod Dibbin around in London, and known he was by everybody in high society. Horace Ronald Dibbin is actually the guy who invented the Man in the Mask sex parties, the satanic sex parties that feature in Kubrick, and in Eyes Wide Shut. He was the one who, and these are from proper reports from people who attended these parties as well. He used to get girls when they were in their teenage years, and he would make them into what he called Pygmalion girls. Like My Fair Lady came from the play Pygmalion, which is about making a rough round the edges girl into a lady, etc. Well, he was making them into basically, fun dolls, if you want to avoid getting censored. They were the finest girls of their type around. In actual fact, one of them was Mariella Novotny, and she was involved in the downfall of the British government and the Profumo affair. She was also smuggled out of JFK's bedchamber by the FBI and the CIA and smuggled back across to Britain. And so while was in between just being elected and just about to get into office, and that looked like it was the FBI spying on him. In actual fact, what happened at the time is that these nightclubs all got taken over by gangsters, intelligence agents, and people who ran satanic sex parties, because all of the high society they were making their money by dropping information to Soviet spies and to other people. They were going to the nightclubs during the Cold War. People said, they didn't know, they didn't think they might die tomorrow. They thought they might die now. There's no point in not living. So they were just betraying everybody all of the time. The Perfumer affair showed that. John Perfumer, who is the head of the war minister in the UK, got found to be in bed with all these girls, Christine Keeler, Mariella Novotny, and others. And these were all the girls who hung around in the same area. They also have repeating themes within there. There's a guy who hung around with them, George Huntington Hartford II, who was the A&P grocery heir in America. He was like the original Jeffrey Epstein. Everything about him is identical. He had Stephen Ward, who was a patsy in the Perfumer affair, go out to find him girls like his Ghislaine Maxwell, go to find him girls who were between the ages of 13 to 18 because he liked them prime. He had a Paradise Island. He had a P on the flag, and everybody knew what that meant. And it was all high society who were going there because high society have a very limited number of places to go. If I got a little bit of money, I don't go to McDonald's. Okay, I admit it. I admit it. If I've got a bit of money, I go to a nice restaurant. The more money you got, the nicer the restaurant you go to. If you've got an unlimited amount of money, you will create your own restaurants by having your own chef. And if you've got then that, you're like, I want something more. That's like all of these guys at the top just want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And those edges are always, nearly always, what you said there, proclivities. There's all of these different proclivities. And a lot of them is that the betrayal and the deception of being in a polite society which is mostly Christian, Muslim, Jewish, etc., and being a Satanist is one of the things that they love the most because they get to deceive everybody. They get to sacrifice people and hurt people in terrible ways, and they get to know that they've done that and walk around, and that fills them with some form of joy and some sort of feeling of power and control. And that comes from narcissistic personality.
Right.
That comes from
It
the
feeds
worst.
that.
Yeah, and if narcissists, you can't get to the top. This is another thing I was talking about with Eslan. You can't get to the top of any company, any organization, anything like that, without thinking of number one. That's the way you rise to become a boss. I can never get up to a certain point because every time I get to a certain point, I'm just too nice a guy. So I'm going to be nice to people, and the bosses don't like it. So any empathy is knocked out of people on the way up the ladder. The majority of people, and there are, especially within technology pioneers, people who have pioneered technology, people who have pioneered different things that have been really something that is unexpected. It comes out of nowhere. Few of those, are really nice people and just stay out of that society, stay out of that world. Not every rich person is bad, like the same with races, and not everything is one way, but the most narcissistic, the people who are desperate for it.
It rewards narcissism. That path rewards narcissism. It doesn't mean that all of them are. I mean, I've got some dear friends who are ridiculously powerful billionaires that are some of the kindest human beings on the planet.
Mhm.
So those exist. It's just that, some of the people that get to the top of, big enterprises or, people who are, working 100 hours a week. They're obsessed. They're, focused on themselves. Everything else around them, does not matter. They have a singular focus. There's no
I think
noise.
there's a genetic
Noise they
aspect.
want.
There's
Yeah.
a genetic aspect. So I've done a lot of my research. So I kind of, because I skip through history, I like history tells us a lot. Fathers and sons who are like this tend to have similar histories. So Okay, I'll give you some of the fathers and sons that I've got to. I can even go a bit further. With Bill Gates, I went back to 1375, and I went
Mm,
through the main Gates line all the way back. And there was some really interesting people in the people who worked in the slave trade, people who did certain different things. But there was two within the Gates family. So Jeffrey Gates the third is in the direct line, the male line of Bill Gates' family. So Jeffrey Gates III and his brother Sir John Gates were decapitated on the first day that Mary Tudor took office because they were behind the coup, the attempted coup to put Lady Jane Grey on the throne and to undermine the line of succession. There's elements where direct lines they repeat over and over again. I've seen this multiple times. You look at Peter Thiel. You go to his father, Klaus Thiel. What was Klaus Thiel doing when Peter Thiel was a young boy, 4, 5, 6? Klaus Thiel is working in a uranium mine in Swakopmund, near Swakopmund, in a place called Roysing, and they are using black slave labor. They're sending black people down the uranium mine. The black people don't know what the mine is. They're going down without any protection, ingesting uranium, going home to their families, giving them the same issues. Everybody's dying. The 4 different languages in the region all come up with the same a line. It manifests out of there. The mines are eating us because they were being eaten to death over a period that was decades and decades, an unrecorded genocide that Truth and Reconciliation swept under the carpet. Oh, Nelson Mandela, let's forget everything and let's just move on. So Klaus Thiel's living there. Peter Thiel's living in a place where there's Nazi flags on the wall, where people are doing Nazi salutes, and everybody's still just basically German living in Nazi Germany, but it's down in South Africa. So there's a relation there. Klaus Schwab, same thing. Klaus Schwab's in the same area selling nuclear technology, nuclear weapons technology at the same time in South Africa, illegally proliferating weapons. This comes up in a Swiss report in 1992, which shows that all of these different companies, including the company Klaus Schwab was working for, and that was his father's old company, Escher Weiss. It had just merged to Schulze Escher Weiss. He had taken over the merger of that. And what had his dad done? His dad had made large turbines for the Nazi effort to make the atomic bomb program. So they repeat, they literally, these guys who are high acting, high functioning, repeat the same things over and over again.
wow.
It's interesting that Elon Musk, it doesn't actually necessarily go farther to say. There are like points where when you've got a guy like Elon Musk, you can see that his maternal grandfather Haldeman was much more like what Musk has become. He was the head of the Technocratic Inc., which was considered a terrorist group at one point. He had a futuristic view of everything. I think he looks a lot more like that than he does than his dad, to be perfectly honest. But there's a genetic element to it. These guys who are high functioning, it's not everybody in the family. I look at the ancestors of Jeffrey Gates III, and I go through his ancestors. His ancestors, 2 down the line, Stephen Gates has got like 12 kids, and only one of them is going to go on and be the shining example, the money maker, the whatever, out of the success out of all of those kids. So it's not like everybody will suddenly be. It tends to be like there's this one strand that goes down through time, and that has led me at times to believe that there might be an even more, like, to get esoteric about it and say maybe there's actually something in it, like a much more divine thing behind it. But then that's a conversation for a different day.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, the Bible does talk about the sins of generations and how they get passed down. So there is some, you know, I think a probably good base to that, and some of it also is nurture as well. What the fathers teach these sons. I mean, you look at a lot of the things that Bill Gates believes about our population. I mean, his father was very much in favor of reducing the Earth's
Mhm.
population. He was essentially in favor of all kinds of eugenics and different things like that, in the way that he thought about the world. So a lot of that thinking moves down to a Bill Gates who thinks, by the way, that he's like a Thanos style character, and he's
you
and
you
he's the
you
good
can
guy that's going to take that power to himself.
you can see that as well. It's not really, it is to an extent that simple, because the people who, if you're Bill Gates' dad and or granddad, you surround yourself with like-minded people. So Bill Gates grows up not only with his dad as an example, but with loads of people his dad knows as an example. So like Barbara Marx Hubbard being one of them, and you see lots of images. I remember something. It was an article by John Kleincheck that came out in about 2022, 2023. That was about Barbara Marx Hubbard, and there was a couple of images of her and Bill Gates when he was really young. If you're hanging around with these people who believe in Malthusianism, neo-Malthusianism, and population control, you're going to see it as, oh, of course it's that, because that's what everybody around me says. It's the same thing. Then these are the same people who understand that themselves and create that for us within algorithmic form to control us. They surround us with an idea, and we think we're above being tricked, we're above being nudged, we're above being told what to do, but we're not. We are really
Yeah,
simple creatures, especially in the brain. You gotta accept that you're not like a man of steel, especially not in mentally. We can all be broken by our experience. We can think, we can pretend, and we can act with hubris and believe that we're above being broken, but we are humans, and humans can be broken, and they
that's
know
right.
that.
Yeah, no, that's right. And you have to examine carefully, the narratives that you're being fed, the propaganda you're being fed, because I mean, the social media world is a cesspool of
Mhm.
psychological operations meant to divide us, meant to distract us. And oftentimes they'll take true things mixed in with a lot of nonsense coming from somebody's mouth so that you dismiss it all. And they do that all the time. They'll throw a tremendous amount at the algorithm, so that the truth gets obscured and lost and dismissed in that whole entire operation against us.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've been there firsthand. I've been in the middle of it. I've experienced it on all angles. So I've got, like, when you get to a certain amount of followers or whatever, and you get a certain amount of influence due to whatever you do, they come for you. They come for you, and they start offering you money to say things.
Yep. Yep.
And
I've
when
had that,
after,
yeah, I've had that happen to me,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I'm not for me, I can't stomach it, just personally. It's just not the way I'm wired. I'm successful enough that I don't need to, get a check for saying something that I'm not sure about or I don't believe.
Then it can be funny though. I because I'm the same as you. At times when I was offered a certain amount of money regularly for doing a certain thing, I've had no money and I've turned it down. Now, at the start, when I first got offered something, it was quite funny. Someone come to me. It was I'm going to say it out loud. It's the Mario Nawfal people. I had appeared on a load of X spaces, and they come to me and they said, "We want you to comment on our AI." And they didn't give me any instructions. They said, "We're willing to pay you for this many posts and stuff." And they didn't give me any instructions. And I realized they kind of made a mistake. They, like, simplistically, they're assuming that I'm automatically going to be like, all right. And then I'll say nice, positive things about them. So I said, yeah. They paid me. I went there. I said the first thing, and they were like, "You can't say that. That's terrible. And I was like, well, you didn't tell me what I was meant to say. And they said, okay, can you just interact with her to finish off the contract? Don't post anything else. They said to me, and I watched and I sat. So I got money for free, really. I got to, I actually saw something else there. I saw another so I see things like that and I think, okay, first of all, I'm an investigative journalist. I want to know more about how they do that. They come in, they say that to me, they make a little mistake, but it means I'm able to see what the AI bot looks like, that I'm able to see the stream of people who they're paying, and I'm
Mhm.
able to see how obedient those people are. So you've
Yeah.
got a load of people who are saying over and over and over again, "Oh, great, it's the AI bot. Oh, this AI bot's amazing," and they don't even know what they're saying. What is an AI bot is amazing? What does that mean? Like AI is like AI bots are just they're insufferable nearly all of the time. Like who would say who would praise them? But they're the same people who you'd accept as the same people who they feed in the for you line, in the for you
Mhm.
category.
Yep.
Now I wanted I do a truth bomb, a show called Truth Bomb, which is a quiz show, and I get two members of the independent media community to go against AI's official narrative and set the record straight with truth bombs. It's a really good way to show how AI is the official narrative and to go against it. And I said to them, I tell you what, you pay me a load of money and I'll make this chatbot the antithesis of me on Truth Bomb because that's the only place it is for me. And they were like, "Oh no, 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 thank you very much." I was like, "Oh, okay, then you miss out your opportunity." But there are still opportunities to expose or do when you get close enough. Now, the next time they come to me, they said it was a real like they obviously sent it to a load of people. They said, "We want to pay you a few £100 a month, and you do 7 tweets a week that are anti-trans." And I was just like, dudes, man, like, pay me to hate for 7 days. Most people who I know loads of people in my community. Some are straight, some are this, some consider themselves trans, whatever. I'm not. When it comes down to like the nuances, kids, bathrooms, I get really frustrated and really,
Yeah.
really like conservative about it. But with everything else, I'm like, I like most people are just nice people trying to get through life, and if you meet them, they're just nice people who are trying to get through life.
Yeah, and we
And
should be kind we should be kind to those folks, you know?
well,
Yeah, I mean, I was outspoken when
organized,
it came to what they were doing with kids and,
yeah.
stuff like that, and I think there's some real evil, but, otherwise, let your freak flag fly, I don't really care.
And not only that, is that to be paid to take money to be hateful. It
Yeah,
sounds like that's like the worst thing that you could do for your soul. So it doesn't only like allow for them to manipulate the algorithms, manipulate other people, but it's a soul breaking experience. Now there's a load of people. Then I can go and see these people making all of these posts, and they're all just being paid to say that. There's no belief in what they say, and we
yep,
know see that deep down that's what our own moral and ethical objection is. And we can't define that easily when we see people. But these people who are getting boosted, who are getting put out, who are getting lifted up, are doing what the masters tell them. They're
yeah.
being paid to say stuff that is mostly either AI is brilliant, crypto's wonderful, boo to trans people, and that's basically it. I'm not into any of that.
No, I say this all the time. I mean, my highest value that I hold is authenticity. And we all have our problems, we all have our things, we all have our proclivities, we all have our sins, we've all got our problems. You could be the biggest a hole on the planet, but if you're sincere and authentic, I kind of like you. And
Yeah.
so the folks that are out there that are pumping up for money, all kinds of things, I truly despise.
Y
And I had this really interesting thing the other day. Somebody bet me something and I'll come on your show and I'll debate you and and watch you won't accept this debate challenge. And so I go, okay, let's go. And I said, DM me and we'll do it. And they DM me and I set them up with my team and my producer sends me the screenshot of the conversation, and this person was like, okay, what role do you want me to play? I could play the antagonist, I could do this, I could do that, I could be somebody who's so convinced by Bryce's compelling arguments that I come around, and I'm like, oh, forget it. I thought this was a person that had some sincerely held beliefs and was going to go at it with me,
I
and
can sympathize. I can
crazy.
sympathize, man. At the beginning of my journalistic career, when I was first going on podcasts, it was about like 2016, 17, and I was crapping myself. I thought it was the most scariest thing around. And I kept thinking, how have I got to be? How have I got to be? And I can sympathize with the idea that you feel that you've got to be someone else when you've got a persona on stage. It takes a while to develop, and it is from practice to develop your natural authentic
Hmm.
way on
Yeah.
camera. You go onto camera and you automatic and sound audio is the same. I'm a musician since I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, so I know the thing of looking at myself and judging myself lots, but you do have to get over that. And once you do get over that and you learn how to just be, then when you see these people, you think, I still think to myself, oh man, I feel sorry that, because it's a sign that they haven't found themselves. If they're offering you all different fronts, they haven't found themselves. Because if they found their natural self, seriously, it's so easy to live and talk and
Yeah, I
interact.
mean, I think that's why a lot of actors are hard to be friends with, because they
Yeah.
don't, they're so used to just assuming or playing roles that they aren't, authentically themselves ever. And that's what I think a lot of these people are online. Whereas, for me, I mean, political philosophy, knowing why I believe what I believe, thinking through things has just been a part of, my entire existence. I mean, I was a kid talking at, 15, 16 to my friends about, political ideas, or, how we should run things, and so it was probably more in my DNA. I didn't really care for sports or any of those other things. I mean, I was an athlete, but I wasn't interested in a lot of that other stuff. And so I thought a lot about things. And so to me, people that are interacting in social media space that really don't really have an authentic positions on things, I get your point and I'm not dismissing it, but man, I just reflexively am allergic to those people.
It makes me think of I wrote the first article I wrote in 2024 about Elon Musk's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein via Edge and his training via Jeffrey Epstein funded programs on how to manipulate people by using social media. Isn't that just what you'd expect? That when I did that article, it's called The Third Culture, and that was based on John Brockman's idea of a third culture. And what I hear you describing there is there's a couple of routes to describe this. But a guy called C.P. Snow wrote a book called Two Cultures back in about 1959. And it said basically that the people of the sciences don't understand, like, the works of Shakespeare, and the people of the arts don't understand the second law of thermodynamics, and never the twain shall meet. And these two people are so far removed from each other that every time they try and cross over, they get confused. And that's part of the reason why society is in such a state, because we've got these two cultures that exist that are really massively important but don't really communicate. And the idea of Brockman was to create a third culture over the top that allowed to combine the arts and sciences, but could have just been a tool to convince scientists to go to an island and have sex with children. Have relations with children. So I mean, it could just be that. Now, the other thing I want to say is something I've said a couple of times on a couple of shows. It's one of the most interesting things. I was researching Bohemian Grove. It was for a video, a Newshound video. I did a two-part video on Bohemian Grove. The first, like the initial history of Bohemian Grove in the first part, and like the later years in the second part. And when I was doing research into the first part, I ended up finding this article. It's my favorite article in history ever. I've never come across an article that I've loved so much. It was by a woman called Alice Ricks. Yes, a woman, if you'd believe it. She could write like the devil. But no, she was a fantastic mind. All of her work is just amazing. Just puts the journalists of today completely to shame. Her writing and her tone and her voice was art. It was art all over. She was describing Bohemian Grove in 1896. And she's explaining about what Bohemian Grove is. And she does it by creating three characters. She creates the government man, the careful, prudent, organized man, the fella who, he hangs out in one of the camps in Bohemian Grove because Bohemian Grove is made up of three camps. And the other camp is made up of the academics. And the academics, they don't quite understand the government and they don't quite understand the other camp, which is the Bohemians, the artists, the musicians, etc. And these three camps are how society is run. And you can say it in one sentence. You can explain to people in one sentence, basically. I'm sorry if I end up splitting it into two now. I promised one sentence. But you can explain it in one sentence how society works through explaining the different camps. In Bohemian Grove, you have the academics who think up how society looks and runs in their think tanks and university. They give it to the government man who can only implement it with the permission of the people. So they can't do that because none of the people listen to the government or the academics. So they go to the Bohemian who convinces the people on their behalf to implement the social change the government has decided on due to the academics telling them it's the right way. That's it. That's how society works. The academics comes up, yeah, there's loads of money, there's loads of other things, that goes on. But the academics tell the government what to tell the Bohemians to tell the people, and that's it. And when we saw the pandemic, what did we see? We saw all of the actors, all of the comedians, first wave, straight out doing dances
Yep.
on TV. James Corden, Steve Colbert, ba 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 ba. Look at us! Don't look anywhere else. You listen to what we say, and if you don't do what the government says, you're bad people. Suddenly they're in bed with the government because the government told them they had to do that because that's what the academics told them what they had to do. That's how society works. That's how we get told what we do.
Yeah, I love that. So in our remaining time, I would love to hone in on getting back to the Epstein thing. I think that our current administration has totally messed this thing up, and I think that there's a lot of sincere players that were involved that did want to release everything unredacted, let the chips fall where they may, and then it has just been an absolute disaster, and it remains this horrible hangover. I I've looked into, the information that has been, released so far, and I've been watching the people who have been diagnosing it. And like you said in the beginning, it was, a scheme to trap a lot of the left and contain a lot of those folks and a lot of those people. And you look at who is in it, it is overwhelmingly Democrats and old line Republican types. And really, what I would say is that whole deep state blob that you talked about, or that whole uniparty blob. And
Mhm.
some of the narrative against Trump is starting to fall apart. There's things that have been released that Trump aided officials in nabbing and going after Epstein. But he's handled this, I think, horribly in not, gosh, for lack of a better term, not letting more of this stuff out. Though I kind of understand because it implicates kind of the whole structure of the world, and it reveals so much about that powerful class that the oligarchs, the people who are pulling the strings, the globalists, other government actors and leaders around the globe. I mean, it's such a messy thing. So what say you?
Well, it is. I see this through the lens of fifth generation warfare.
Mhm.
I believe that there was a plan made up in 2017. Stanley Pottinger, based a company called FAE in his Twin Lakes property in South Salem, just outside New York. Next door was Matthew Pottinger, who was the protege, his son, of course, but was the protege of Michael Flynn, who was writing and organizing fifth generation warfare use for the American military. And had just been working for Tier 1 Black Ops and as the head of the DIA. So there was a lot of, I think there's a lot of fifth generation warfare about this. And if you look at it through that lens, it makes a hell of a lot more sense, especially how the drops go. And I don't think Trump or anybody around or Bondi, anybody has much say on how they're put out, because they're being put out in the way they are for a reason. And it's
I do
pretty
believe that.
genius.
I do believe
So
that.
the reason is a lot of the information that you can find in the drops is a lot of it is out there, not the emails and stuff, but a lot of the stuff they're putting out, especially in the first waves, were things like, you know, redacted versions of the flight manifest or the little black book, or pages from the court documents that were already released and already available to the public in mostly unredacted form online already. And what they did was they released a load of stuff that was already in the public domain, the majority of it, but it was redacted when they released it. So people, instead of looking at the unredacted versions, they praise and look at the redacted versions. Now that's an interesting aspect of fifth generation warfare. You don't want that information. You want to bring that in, get that information out of the public domain. How do you do it? You can't redact things that are already in the public domain. Well, it turns out you can. You just release loads of stuff that is redacted and push it out there, flood the zone. People don't find the unredacted stuff. They only find the redacted stuff. In actual fact, they think it's only come out redacted and it's never come out unredacted, and they don't know the difference
Great
because
point.
it's redacted, so they can't see where it's come from and what it means in the first place to understand where it's come from. Now, in the future, people are going to be really angry because it's clear that because it's redacted, you can't understand the full picture. You can understand little bits, but you can't see who's involved. And that's going to cause more problems. So it means that if you want to flood the zone with a load of redacted information, they've done it. The next stage is to flood the zone with the same information that's slightly less redacted. And then they flood it out and people are still angry. And then you get the next one, which is the same information again, flooded out into the zone with minute. In 20 years' time, you get the unredacted versions and you get to see how it's all a fit up. The redactions are there for a reason. So I'll give you an example of this, and it's a personal example because I'm in the Epstein files. I wasn't expecting to be in the Epstein files, but I'm both in the Epstein files and searchable on the Gmail too. You can search my name Vedmore, Johnny Vedmore, and you'll find me in both Gmail and in the Epstein files. My ex-partner and mother of my child, Whitney Webb, she's also in the Epstein files, of course. Now, why? Why were they in the Epstein files? Well, I was writing about Stanley Pottinger, who's on the Epstein's victims legal team, and how he was had run guns with Epstein, lived next door to Epstein, shared an office with Epstein, and how he was a member of the CIA. And the Department of Justice were watching me and my messages, and they were sending it to Stanley Pottinger and David Bowie to warn them, collude with them, to tell them, watch out, this guy's reporting on you. And so it's not just, if you saw the unredacted names, they've got a load of names. They've got David Bowie's unredacted, and then they got a load of names that are further redacted, and then they got another unredacted. So I know two of the people in it. So if it's gone to David Bowie's has just been in a law firm and works closely with John Stanley Pottinger. Bradley Edwards got introduced to David Bowie's via Stanley Pottinger. As Stanley Pottinger was considered to be David Bowie's Winston Wolfe by Bradley Edwards. And also Bradley Edwards said over and over again, it was obvious he was the CIA. It was definitely the CIA. Even asked him, are you in the CIA or not? And when they denied it, he was like, that's something the CIA would say. So, yeah. I mean, they're pretty much, the ones that redacted would show you that one of the people is Stanley Pottinger. So it would show the collusion. It would show you that the exact people I'm writing about are being warned by the State Department that we've rumbled them. And that is a very interesting thing, because that'll come up.
And there's hundreds of thousands of pages of that kind of material too, that just is, it's, that they're throwing at us, tons of things, which again is just a distraction that you have to sift through.
They must have, the people redacting this, that must have been wild. Like they're like going through what we redacted on this page. Well, I have no idea. Let's just redact a load of stuff for fun to confuse people. Yep. There's going to be a lot of that. So the same thing, we go back to the beginning of our conversation. We're talking about the letter drops outside airplanes in World War II. And those letter drops, for people who don't know, were psychological operations where they'd get this leaflet. The Germans would suddenly, like a German citizen walking down, and a leaflet drops down and says, you're the Nazis are about to be defeated, and we've already come over the front line over here or whatever, and it would lower the morale of the people. Well, that's the same thing with this. You're getting told very carefully, this is a very advanced version of that. That was developing forms of marketing, forms of PR, forms of making you think, making you believe something by taking out certain parts. And right. When you redact stuff, it's really amazing how you can, it's like if someone says a load of things and you took out certain words, you can make them say anything.
Oh yeah, and so much of that's going on, and then of course social media proliferates those things, throws out the the narratives that they want in the midst of the confusion. People glom onto it. I had Dr. James Lindsay on the other day, and we talked about it being like the starlings, as birds. They work by only seeing the birds that are above them, below them, and to the side of them, and so it's a group of 3 or 4 birds within that big thing that they're paying attention to. And maybe it's a bug that gets thrown in there, and they all undulate in that direction. And I feel like that's what they're doing to people online. You've got the bots that are a part of that, so you can sway whole masses of people into thinking things just by a few influential cases or influential people and bots.
How to be resilient to this, how to be resilient to online manipulation. You've got to be firm. You've got to say to yourself, if you can prove that these people are mass posting all at the same time, the same information in basically the same words, you should either mute or block them straight away. You should get rid of them. If you go to X, they produce the For You line, get off the For You line. That For You line, if you look at a time, when something information comes out and they want you to think one thing, you go to that For You line, you can see everybody down there, and they're all posting the same image or the same little quote or the same. Every single one of them. Mute them, block them, mute them, block them, mute them, block them, mute them, block them. Get them out. If they're going to be involved in brainwashing, they're not your friends. There's no, you shouldn't have to like wrestle with that. You shouldn't have to worry, oh, but I like the way they say funny jokes here and there, or I like the cat videos they post up. Don't think they're your friends. If they're mass posting to brainwash you, they're bad people.
Well, hey, that's a perfect way to end this. Johnny, where do we find you? Where do we follow you? Where do we pay attention to your writings? I appreciate you, man.
I love it, man. Newspaste.com. You can find me on Substack under Newspaste. On nearly everything, if you just type in Johnny Vedmore, that's Johnny, Johnny. Vedmore on anything on YouTube, on whatever. I'm there. I'm pretty interactive. I know it's quite hard to be interactive because now I got quite a lot of people coming in, but I still am super interactive. I love the people who get involved, especially if you come watch any of my YouTube live stuff where I'm in the chat or when I'm doing stuff live. I listen. I love my guys, so you're always welcome. If you really want to help me, you can support me in different ways: Patreon, buy me a coffee, whatever. But you can also go to somewhere like Spotify or Apple Music and listen to my music. You could actually just type in Johnny Vedmore and you could listen to the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, The Musical, and I promise you, you'll enjoy it. You'll find it very thrilling and funny.
I love it. Well, thank you for your voice. I appreciate the authentic guys out there. You're an excellent researcher. You do a great job writing and summarizing and laying out the truth wherever you find it. Appreciate you, brother. To God be the glory. And we are out. Weird subject here, but most of us who've lived a little life out there or live with beloved pets accumulate parasites. If you're struggling with gas, bloating, loose stools, or constipation, or if you often feel tired and weak, there's a good chance you might have a parasite. According to the CDC, millions of Americans are infected, but most of us are unaware. That's why folks are loving Paratarget by Nature's Blast. Paratarget contains a unique blend of natural ingredients that help kick those parasites to the curb. People who use it have reported better digestion and improved energy levels. Just one scoop mixed into your favorite room temperature or cold drink every day does the trick. You'll even get delicious recipes for a tropical smoothie and refreshing citrus sunrise mocktail. Try Paratarget for yourself and save 35% on your order today. Go to Nature's Blast store and enter discount code Bryce at checkout. That's Nature's Blast store to get 35% off of Paratarget. Enter Bryce, B-R-Y-C-E, at checkout.